Hello, everybody. Welcome to Build or Buy. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock. Time to get started. Joe, are you going to be working on that computer back there? Or are you going to come up front? Okay. Let's get a mic on you. So do we need to put a camera back there on that computer? Or are you just going to tell about it? DOA, dead or alive. Okay. Okay. Here's the mics. So you can go ahead and get hooked up. Run the credits. Joe's mic's right here. He needs to turn it on. Okay, we've had several people that are interested in kind of the stuff going on, a little bit of homework. For those of you online, welcome. This is our last meeting for the month. Next week we will not have a meeting, but we will be back in November for that first Wednesday. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Intel, AMD. I know somebody was interested in buying a laptop or possibly building a computer, and I thought we'd go through some of the stuff that's going on with AMD and Intel right now and outline some of the chipsets and kind of where this all started. Now, Manolo, you were interested in getting a laptop. Can we get a mic, please, on Manolo, Robert? He's on the far side. Yeah, if you would, thank you. Okay, Manolo, tell us kind of about what you're interested in as soon as you get a mic over there.
Well, I just want a laptop. Hello?
I can hear you. Camera number 4.
Just for home use, you know, a good one, fast.
That's the other question. You want something that's good and fast. And
how much do I want to spend?
How much do you want to spend?
Well,
you want something cheap or you want something fast?
I want something good, fast.
Okay. There's been 2 camps and 2 different opinions. You asked my opinion about a laptop.
Okay.
And I expressed my opinion. The other camp is interested in a Dell. So if you want to talk to somebody about a Dell, what I would say would be to talk to like Jack Hamilton. Jack bought a Dell that was customized by, was it HID Evolution or Solutions?
High Devolution, yeah.
High Devolutions?
Oh yeah, I've talked to him.
High Devolution.
He's way over my budget. He's got more money than I've got.
Okay, well,
Not anymore.
okay, well, the point of the question is because Jack has done all the research. Jack would be a good person to talk to about that particular Dell. Or you could talk to Dwayne. Dwayne himself is also interested in a laptop, and Dwayne is in the Dell camp. Myself, I like the computer that Lou Warren bought, that Andrew bought, good to see Andrew, and that Nick Streeter bought. That's the one that I like, and that's what I judge other laptops by, and that's the Asus Zen 4K. It's not a true 4K laptop, but it's 4K, and it's a beautiful, beautiful machine. It's getting hard to find because the technology is changing again. But if I were looking one 30 days ago, a couple of months ago, that's what I'd be looking for. But it's changing now, and as it changes, I'm waiting for that next round to come out. And a lot of the new ones that are coming out, I can't see justification for the price. I think, David, have you got some comments? Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're skirting around the issue. You need to define what the budget is, okay?
That would help.
You know, now, the Zen that Lou got is what, $1,200 bucks? $900 to $1,200 bucks?
I believe the Asus Zen was at $1,200 bucks, but it's a lot more expensive than that now.
Okay. And Manolo, your comment was that 1,200 is just fine or way too much? Okay. All right. Well, so I too believe that Asus Zen. I have a couple of those Asus Zen lines, and I've been real happy with them. But there are a couple of other things that you should look at. Lenovo makes some of the very best laptops out there. HP makes some good laptops, and so
it's interesting you mentioned Lenovo because when we get to desktops in a little bit, Lenovo is the only one right now licensed to build an AMD Threadripper as a factory option, which I find quite curious at the moment. I expect that to change.
And remember that Lenovo are the people who bought out IBM's
yes.
consumer computer business.
Yes.
So, we really should talk about exactly what you're going to do with your computer. If you want it just to do basic email and desktop programs like Word or the equivalent, or Office programs like a spreadsheet program, a presentation program like PowerPoint, things like that. You really should consider Google's computers, their Chromebook computers.
Please stand still, David.
They're Chromebook computers because they are the most secure computers that you can get, in that every time that you turn the computer off and turn it back on, it gets you a brand new, fresh operating system that is trouble virus free. And we don't talk about that enough in here, but you really should consider them. They have a new laptop that's out for about $1,000 that is a real winner. About $1,000, Google's new laptop.
Okay.
I'll get you. We're going to put Joe's computer up on the screen. That'll be number 1.
Wait a minute. We're not done. I have some comments on the laptop also. I would like to understand what it is, sir, you want to do with your laptop.
That's what we just went through, Mel. That's what we just talked about.
No, but he did not. You didn't answer.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What do you want to do with your laptop? And talk right into the top of this.
Well, I just want to use it everyday use. I'm not a big
For the internet? For the internet?
for my house, yeah.
I mean, to go browse and surf for things? What happened? There. So, and then do you want to use email?
Yeah, I use email a lot, yeah.
Okay, then I would say you don't need a big, fancy, fast computer. If you watch the sales at Micro Center particularly, you can find a good, fast laptop. To me, one of the most important things is the touch on the keyboard, unless you have an external keyboard. Do you have a separate keyboard?
No, I can use this keyboard.
That keyboard. So go where you can touch the keys and see if they're easy for you to use.
Okay.
Do you do things with numbers? Spreadsheets and things? You might want one with a number pad on it.
Okay, sure.
Or not. You can always use the numbers up here, but it's easier to use the number pad.
Yeah, I don't have a strong preference.
Okay.
Okay.
But I would say let Micro Center show you what they have and let them type on the keyboards so that you can see which one feels right to you. Work the touchpad to see if that works comfortably, or do you want an external mouse? Do you want a separate mouse? You've got one now.
I'm sorry, I still can't.
Yeah, do you want a separate mouse?
Yeah, I like a separate one.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So that'll be easy to use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's take a look at, Joe's going to share some information about his laptop.
They were talking about the $1,000 Lenovo, and this is it. Oh, well, Lenovo too. Here's the $1,000 Lenovo.
At B&H?
No, I don't know where it is. But the point is, it's,
Yeah, it's B&H Photo Video.
okay, yeah, specs, 2.7 gigahertz i7 7500, dual core, 16 gig of RAM, 15.6 inch, and it's 19 by 1080i, 1080 IPS. So it's NVIDIA graphics card with its own 2 gig of memory. This will give you anything you want, and you can do these things with it. Notebook. And I know from experience that if you're going to going on a plane, this is helpful.
Well, we're looking.
I don't see where it says touch screen. Well, I'll get your. Well, let's,
Scroll up just a little bit. Oh,
do
multi-touch, multi-touch, 2-in-1 notebook. There it is.
yeah, there you go. Yes, it is touch screen.
Yeah, for the price.
Yeah. And if you want to go down to, if you don't need that much memory, go down to 8 gig of memory. Okay? $704.
And then you can always add more RAM later if you choose to.
And this has got a 256 gigabyte SSD in it. Let's go back and see. Nope. Yep. As a matter of fact, the notebook I've got right now, I bought well over 9 years ago, and it was the first notebook on the market with a keypad on it, 15.4 or 15.6, and that's what I got it for, because I like the keypad.
Manolo, does that help? Manolo, does that help?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, that did help. Thank you.
Good, good. Okay, so that took care of your needs. You're looking at a laptop, and that was at B&H Photo Video. B&H is a good place to buy stuff from. Always had good luck with them. Okay, Ray's not with us today. He's at the doctor's office again, but he's possibly getting ready to build a new machine. And I've got some links I want to show you on Build or Buy that deal with what Intel and AMD is doing with the new i9. Ray Morris is thinking about building an i9. And he's kind of like Jerry Lee. Whatever they're going to do Intel. But I'm like Joe. I want bang for the buck. But I'm looking at something bigger, and I'm going to build a Threadripper. So I'm going to go through and show you the big glaring difference in the two, the AMD versus the Intel with the chipset. Those are a couple of differences. And where this all started, Ray's having trouble with his video card. So he's going to start with the video card, but instead of using a desktop video card like a gaming card, he's going to use a workstation card. So I have a link to that workstation card to show you what he was looking at, and then I have a link that I can show you one of the more current type workstation video cards. And then I've got some links where we'll go through and see what AMD's got. And what the biggest article I found that I liked the best, that to me was the most best comparative article, I should say, was at I believe it was PC World. Let me go over here to a different computer. I'm going to go over here to from your perspective, that'd be computer number 3. And I'm going to bring up Build or Buy. And I'll go down here to our talking points. And I may jump around a little bit, but I'm going to start at the bottom of this. You know, remember last week we mentioned Firefox goes 64-bit. And here's a link to the video card that Ray's looking to get. This is a 4 gig PCI Express 3.0 by 16 workstation graphics card. Now this is not one of the newer cards, this is one of the older cards. So I hold down the control key, hit enter. I'm going to bring up this link. This is on Newegg. This is the card that Ray's looking to buy. And I kept asking him, okay, I understand chipset, but which brand, who made it? He kept saying AMD. I said, I get that, but that's the chipset. I said, who made it? He said, AMD. Okay, AMD made that card. I didn't realize that. It's like when you look for a lot of the NVIDIA chipsets on a workstation card, you're looking at a P and Y. And I didn't realize AMD was still making those cards. But this is an AMD Fire Pro.
Which one are you on? What number?
At the talking points on Build or Buy at the very bottom of the list, it's actually number 35, the very bottom. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. And I didn't influence Ray any on his decision. I just said, what card you interested in? Can you send me a link to it? He said, well, I think this may be my problem. I'm going to try to solve it with a video card. He's having a voltage problem. So if the video card doesn't work, and remember, Ray bought the same card that you bought, and the purpose of that card was so you could hook up 6 monitors to it, which he never did. But if you notice the connections on this, these are all Displayport. Most all the workstation cards are Displayport. Some of them will have maybe one HDMI or 1 or 2 of the still old DVI connections, but most of them are full-blown Displayport. What I like about a Displayport and what I don't like. What I like about Displayport is when you plug in a cable, you've got those pinchers on the side that locks that in. I made the comment to Ray about that, and he said, now you tell me. I said, oops, which means back when he built that machine, it had Displayport on it. I didn't remember it because I made the comment about the connections. He said, yeah, I ruined a cable. I said, oops, I didn't think of it back then. But anyway, that's one of the advantages of Displayport. And of course, what I don't like about it, all this stuff we do to get it into the video switch, to get it online, everything's got to have HDMI. So I come out with a real good secure connection on one of those cards with Displayport, but then I have to go through this skanky connector to get it into HDMI. That's what I don't like. Now, there's only one person that's bought that card. There's a review on it. You can see the specs on it. What I find interesting is I look at another model that's above this. For those of you that do video encoding, some of these cards, workstation cards, have an exclusive H.264 codec built into the card, which I find quite fascinating. I haven't seen anyone that does H.265, but the fact that they can natively support H.264 encoding on the card, irregardless of the other technology, I find quite fascinating because I've seen it in separate devices. So I'm going to go back over to Build or Buy, and I'll show you the one I went up above that. Okay, the newer card is the AMD Radeon Pro WX9100. Now, there's a card above this, but this particular card, you can contrast it and look at those connections on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a completely different card than what we were looking at. What's it been, 3 years ago, Jack? At least 3 years, which kind of blows my mind. Those are mini Displayport. The mini Displayport are kind of fragile. You don't have the advantage of the connection like you do on a Displayport. But my point of this is a high-end card. Most people are not going to buy this. But there's 6 connections on there. We were doing 6 connections 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. And now here's a card that'll support 6 monitors natively. And there's a card above this that's ridiculously priced. Even this card I think is expensive, but if it'll do as everything it says, I've got a link and you can follow through it. I don't want to focus on it, I just want to mention it. Yes, sir.
We haven't talked yet about what one of these cards is, except for lots of outputs.
It's a workstation card.
But that's my question. What makes something a workstation card? Is it primarily because it has lots of outputs, or is there some other function on it that you don't find in other just laptop things?
It's not a gaming card.
It's math-oriented,
Very,
and it does things differently than gaming cards do.
very.
And
If you're doing CAD, or if you're doing rendering, or ray tracing with lots of polygons, then you want a workstation card.
Well, all I would do is play video, an MP4.
As I said, you don't want that card.
Sounds good.
If you did a lot of rendering, that's the kind of card you'd want. I'm showing it with a link, making it easy to find, so you can see what all it does and compare it to a desktop card.
when I was putting these computers together for the people in the industry that were doing AutoCAD, and they wanted workstations, and I would recommend these cards that were like $600 and $700, and they say, I can buy a gaming card for $150.
But
I said, yeah, you can, but you won't get the performance out of it. Those gaming cards rely on memory. These things rely on internal components on the card. So it's done on the card and not flashing back and forth the memory. So the $200 card, the gaming card, might have 2 gig of memory. This guy might have half a gig. And it's faster.
because it's made to do different things.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to tell you how much this card is. I'll let you go look it up. Most people are not going to be interested in it. But as a workstation class, if somebody's building an i9, which Ray's talking about doing, or if they're going to build a Threadripper like I'm going to do, it's just a matter of time because I'm going to walk through some of the components and I'll share with you some of the options I'm looking at. So in a workstation class card, I'm looking at either the NVIDIA chipset or Radeon. If I'm looking at a workstation class card with an NVIDIA chipset, it's not going to be like a 1080 Ti or something like that. It's a whole different class of card. It's a workstation card. But the advantage of this, you can look through some of the specs and see what it does. If you're doing design and manufacturing, if you're doing media and entertainment, or if you're doing game development, not playing games, but if you are developing games, then you'd want to have a card like this. And there's some videos there. You can take a look and see what they've got on it. I want to move on through this because I've got some stuff on the NVIDIA. I'm going to hold down a control key and show you what NVIDIA is doing. I want to run through these as quick as I can because I want to get into the processors and the chipsets. Because anybody building a computer, as far as I'm concerned, the foundation of a computer is the chipset. Chipsets rule. Now there's an NVIDIA Quadro, there's the NVIDIA Tesla, and then there's the NVIDIA NVS. What I would be looking at if I built with an NVIDIA chipset would be an NVIDIA Quadro. And those are expensive cards. And most of those that I have found are P&Y cards. Now, as I go up through the NVIDIA, I've got the Quadro link, and I've also got an interesting article here from a company in England called Graytech, Workstation Graphics Cards versus Gaming Cards. This is a company that builds machines for CAD workstations. I find it interesting to see what they have to read about and compare as you're looking to build a machine. Because what I'm going to go through as we get through this, I'm going to show you a couple of links to videos on YouTube where somebody has built a 4K machine with a Threadripper, and somebody else has built an 8K machine also with a Threadripper, to look at the specs and how they got to where they're at. It's not this is what everybody's going to do. It's here's a path somebody went down because this is the goal they're trying to achieve. Now the article I mentioned was on PC World. I've got two on PC World. The AMD Threadripper versus the Intel Core i9, the best CPUs do battle. And it boils down to two things, and there's only one that's a glaring big difference, and I'll get to it in a minute. The PC World AMD Ryzen Threadripper, prices, specs, release date, and features. Okay, they're out. There's 3 different Threadrippers. And at first glance, it looks like the Threadripper uses the same chipset, but it's not. It's different chipset. Different socket, too. I've got a link into the Intel, also the Core X, and I didn't realize Intel had the word Core, C-O-R-E, trademarked. I found that curious. And that processor that Ray's looking at, and the reason I'm showing these, you look at the price of a Threadripper, and you look at the price of that Core i9, and then you look at the specs, and it's like, how does Intel justify that price? When look what you can get from AMD for half the price. Now, I've got a link in here to chipsets, and what it boils down to, there's 2 chipsets you're looking at. There's the Intel x299, or there's the AMD chipset, the x399. Now, when we built the Ryzen machine, I've been impressed, and it continues to impress me. I have a stupid video card in here that I was planning on putting like a 1080 Ti into it, but I'm thinking more seriously about putting a workstation class video card in that machine. But everything I do with that machine, and I haven't had a chance to try the test you asked, and I won't in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to hopefully get to it. But everything I do with the Threadripper as opposed to the FX machines we used to build, I'm thoroughly impressed. This is bang for the buck for what it cost. I was a little bit put off in the beginning when we built them, but Lou built a good machine. I've got a good machine, but I may use a different motherboard. But as I cycle through these items, I've also got some links into Box. Now, Box is another company that builds computers. Box has some information about their Apex 4, and they've got a link up here for Box, which is number 9 and 10. Number 10, Think Again. The Think Again link is for those who have built or are thinking about building an iMac versus building an Intel machine. It's curious to see the components and specs, what they've got listed as you follow through it. Now, if you go to the other link about the Apex 4, the Apex 4 can be either an Intel or an AMD Threadripper. And again, it's fascinating to see the components that this company puts in it, because you've got 2 options. Do you want to build a computer, or do you want to buy a computer? For the most part, if it's a laptop, you're going to buy it. But with a desktop, you've got a whole lot more options. You can choose to buy a computer like that, or you can build it, which is what we've always advocated. And if I were going to build one, what it boiled down to me was that the chipset, which I've chosen the chipset because I've chosen the Threadripper, so it's an AMD x399. If I were going to build the Intel, it would be the x299, so that's what Ray's going to have. Ray's not sure about the motherboard, but it would be my opinion, based on what he built last time, he's probably going to use an ASUS motherboard. ASUS is a great place to be for the Intel. Now, with the Threadripper, there are 4 boards. Each manufacturer has 1 board on that Threadripper with the x399 for the AMD. I'm looking at 2 of those. Possibly the Gigabyte, possibly like we built this Ryzen down here, which we use the MSI board. I like the MSI board, but I'm leaning more toward the Gigabyte to build the Threadripper. And what I'm waiting for are some BIOS updates for this to mature. So what I want to show you is as we go into some of these links, I'll just take you into this article here. There's a link here from Extreme Technology, but I'm going to go down here to the one from PC World, the Threadripper versus the i9. Now, hold down the control key, bring that up. We'll have to deal with the ad that's going to run over it. When it does, I'll get rid of it, but give me just a minute. Once the ad runs, it's not doing it this time. Good. It may pop up. I'm trying to get over here to a chart. If I can get this chart up. A summary of AMD Ryzen and Intel i9 specifications. The Ryzen Threadripper in the Intel Core i9. So let's see if we can bring this graphic up. Okay, there it is. Okay, the top of the line, i9, is $2,000. The top of the line Threadripper, 1950, is $1,000. Now the i9 says it has 44 lanes. In this article, the Threadripper also says 44 lanes. So I'm going to dump, I'll leave that graphic there just a minute because I'm going to bring up another link. This article was published in, let's see, that one was posted 8/11. So that was prior to that coming out. So the information they were working out of that moment has changed. So I'm going to go into the chipset for the AM4. So this is the AM socket AM4 platform. And then I'm going to also bring up the link for the socket TR4. The AM4 is what the Ryzen was built on. The TR4 is the Ryzen Threadripper. 7th generation DDR4, they both use that. Now the x370, that's the chipset we use. And I believe John Lum, you used the B350 chipset. The problems you had nothing to do with the chipset, it was just you had a bad motherboard. But you got all that squared away. So those are the chipsets that run the Ryzen. So the TR4, which is the x399, they call that the ultimate platform for PC enthusiasts. I'm going to go here and click on the specs. It's interesting to note this says it has ECC support. If you go look at the motherboards for the Intel, they don't support ECC. For some folks, that's a big deal. If you're building a workstation, you'd want to spend a little extra money and do the ECC. I haven't seen anybody use ECC memory in a long time, but now, contrast that information with this information. This says the Ryzen Threadripper has 44 PCIe lanes, and this says the Core i9 has 44 lanes. Whereas this information, which is on AMD's website, says what? 66 PCIe lanes. They both use DDR4. They both are DDR4 at the same speed. But the AMD has 66 PCIe lanes. And there's a footnote where it says, another location I can show you, where it says the motherboard could possibly use 2 other PCIe lanes, 2 other lanes than what the CPU supports. Don't know how they do that. But if you'll notice, 66 PCIe lanes. Think of PCIe lanes as the resource like used to when we were dealing with IRQs. You only had so many IRQs. You could only do so much. And IRQs were irksome. With PCIe lanes, that defines how many things you can have on a motherboard. For example, if you say you got a 16-lane slot and you got 4 of those 16-lane slots, at what speed do they run? If all 4 of them run at 16, that ain't going to happen because there's not enough resources for it. So you'll get the first run at 16, you get the second run at 8, and they diminish as you go down the list because they got to have lanes for all the other stuff that's got to have a PCIe lane. So the big deal, the big difference is 66 PCIe lanes. Up to 12 SATA ports. It's got the USB 2 ports. Now this says the NVMe RAID is not supported. You get NVMe, but not NVMe RAID. That's a big deal, then you want to look elsewhere. But my big deal, what I'm looking for, is 66 PCIe lanes. So if I'm going to build a Threadripper, and I'm going to go back over here to Build or Buy, and I'm going to use that faster chip, I've got a link into, well, an article just came out, or actually an ad from Newegg today, showing some of the items that are available. But there's another link on, let's go to the partners, and this will show us the 4 motherboards. These 4 motherboards, this is on AMD's site. And again, this link is on Build or Buy. For those that want to follow this along, we go to Build or Buy, builderbuy.org or builderbuy.net. And this is link number 17, the AMD socket TR4 platform, which is the x399 chipset. And these are the 4 motherboards. And the 2 that I'm considering right now is either the Gigabyte or the MSI. I like the MSI because that's what I built the Ryzen on, but I like the Gigabyte because that's what we've used in the past. Lou's machine, which is a Ryzen 7, was it Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 5? I think it was a Ryzen 7. Anyway, Lou's got a Gigabyte board. My concern is, right now, I don't think I'll have my capability to hot swap my drives on the Gigabyte board. I know I will on the MSI. My concern about the MSI, if the BIOS is configured wrong, it doesn't reboot itself like an ASUS board and start over. You've got to short the BIOS out and start all over. That's what I found on this machine. So I'm going to have to think about the trade-offs. But what I'm waiting on right now is I'm waiting to see who has a more mature BIOS to solve some of the problems people are having. For example, some of the users, what I've read about, if they're having trouble with their board and can't get it up, the vendors are saying just send it back. We're not even going to try to help you with it. But these are the 2 boards I'm looking at, and for the money, it's going to be a Ryzen machine. Yes, sir, Robert.
Are you saying that the Gigabyte board doesn't have a full SATA?
I didn't say that.
Okay, I was just curious why you think you can't hot swap them.
Well, the reason you can't hot swap is because they don't have it turned on in the BIOS. When Lou built her machine, that was one thing that was missing. She does not have hot swap. So if they don't have hot swap on the Ryzen, my expectation is they will not have it on the Threadripper initially. They will eventually. The place in the BIOS where that exists is was not in her machine in the BIOS.
Well, who doesn't have it? Is it the processor that doesn't have it or just the motherboard that doesn't have it?
There needs to be an update to the BIOS to enable that feature.
So it's the motherboard that doesn't have
It's
it?
the motherboard. Now, will Gigabyte eventually turn that on? Absolutely, because they've got it in all their old motherboards. But Lou's didn't have it, and so that's kind of a flag for me. I want hot swap. With the MSI, I'll have hot swap, but I've got some headaches I'll inherit with the MSI that's why I'm on the fence vacillating. I'm waiting to see who has more BIOS, more current. Now, another thing to note, I've always been able to get to Gigabyte's website. Probably 4 or 5 days ago, you couldn't get to anything on MSI's website. I don't know if their DNS was messed up. I don't know if they got hacked, but their site was 3 sheets to the wind. Now, it's up now. Yes, sir.
I would expect that for you, the hot swap would be non-negotiable.
Well, it's a big deal for me because if I pop in a drive to do some of this stuff we're doing with video, I need hot swap. I don't want to take time to reboot a machine, especially that kind of machine. So, yeah, it's kind of a big deal with me. And the setting is in the BIOS on the MSI. I turn it on. I'm hot swap. I'm good to go. In fact, I can show you.
Do you get significant performance out of your disk drives?
Significant performance.
Well, anything approaching the spec for transfer rates. I usually don't, and I'm just thinking, you could use a USB 3 toaster because they're hot swappable, but of course you don't get full USB 3 performance either.
When we were not able to meet, I tried a Seagate USB 3 drive, and I put the article up on Build or Buy. Anybody wants to take a look at it. That sucked. It was going to take over 2 hours to clone a drive. And I said, that's not going to work for me.
Well, that's a particular drive. A toaster lets you put your own drive in it.
You're still running off of USB 3.
It is USB 3, that's true.
And that's the bottleneck. So the way to do anything like that, if you have to go external, in my opinion, for me, because of what I'm doing with the amount of data I'm moving, I've got to have something faster. So if I can get access to USB 3.1c, then I'm ears.
Well, I occasionally, probably less than 5% of the time, can see a transfer rate on the order of 140, 150 maybe, whatever the unit is, megabits per second.
Right.
But it's much more common to be about around 80 or 90. And if I'm doing something that's going to take hours, it usually ends up between 30 and 40. So these are SATA drives.
Right.
Plugged in, they're equivalent to internals.
Right.
And you know that those numbers are just not anywhere close to the specification on the devices.
You're not going to reach that. Now, to take this a step further, because I'm looking at a specific processor and I'm looking at 2 motherboards, I'm also looking at a specific cooler. And because of what I encountered last time with that cooler, I'm looking at a specific case to accommodate that cooler, which I've never encountered having to consider a cooler according to the case. It's always been case first with me. So I have a case spotted. I have ordered one. I'm going to look at it. I've seen the pictures. I don't know if it's going to work for what I want.
And you think cooling the processor will get you a better data rate?
Well, to get to where you're asking from where I'm talking, my next step is to put a RAID on this computer that will be an external RAID. You can have hardware RAID or you can have software RAID. Hardware is always going to do something better than software can do it. With that said, I don't want to do a RAID internally software. What I'm looking at is using something that I could use spinning drives to start with, that I could then migrate to SSDs later, which would be through Thunderbolt, that would allow me access through that Thunderbolt port, the USB 3.1C.
Well, I had a little experience with Gigabyte motherboard supported RAID, and my recommendation is don't ever use a motherboard RAID, period, because it will not survive a failure. You can't recover from it. You know, you lose all your data when that happens.
The last time I used motherboard RAID, we were using P3 500s. That's how long it's been since I did it. I did it, been there, done that, haven't revisited because I just think it's too much trouble. If any RAID is done, it needs to be done in hardware, and I'm going to do it externally. Akeet IO has a rig that I'm looking at that I should be able to plug into any machine that gives me that Thunderbolt 3 port.
How much does it cost?
Well, you got the price of the case, and then you got the price of the drives.
Yeah, I know, but I bought 2 of those, not that particular thing, and they were something like $600 and $800 each. So then you buy the drives. That are just kind of expensive. If you found a RAID box for $200, well, you know, that's something.
No, it's not a $200 box. In fact, if you'll give me just a real quick second, I may be able to find it. Thunderbolt 3. And that does not look like it. Thunderbolt 3 Duo, that looks like it. That's a Generation 1. There's a Generation 3. The face of these look the same. Now, pictures I've seen online are the exact opposite of what we're seeing on the website. So let me go take a look and see if I can find this on Amazon.
Well, those were cheap, up at the top.
$380.
That holds 4 drives only?
I believe this supports 2 drives.
Oh, okay.
So you're not, you know, a 4 drive would be ideal, but it's going to be a more expensive case.
Well, my small one is a 4, and the second one I bought was an 8. So when I see a 2, I just laugh.
Now that looks like 4 drives.
Yeah, that looks like 4.
So with 4 drives, if I started with, say, 4 terabyte drives, because that's probably the best bang for the buck,
Yeah.
then
That's $600 for the drives and $400 for this box.
right.
Yeah,
Now, if
1,000
I
bucks.
were to migrate that, it depends where I'm going to start. I'm going to start small to get a comfort zone, because if I were going to do this, the purpose of this is so that I can do the 4K video. Because doing 4K video eats a lot of space and eats a lot of time. And I need something that can help this to occur in real time. That's the reason for a workstation graphics card. So anything I do happens in near real time. And anything I put on this is so that I can get that material regurgitated to then get it to wherever I'm going to go with it. Then I delete everything else that's on it. So if I start with 4 terabyte drives, that's an easy comfort zone to work with. My goal, my intention would be to eventually move to helium drives, whether I use 10 terabyte drives or whatever. But that'd be my eventual ultimate purpose.
The thing about RAIDs is they're not incrementally upgradable. You know, if you start with 4 terabyte drives and you spend $600, if you decide, well, let's go with 8s, you have to replace all 4 of them.
Okay, well, when I migrate drives, I wipe them. I start all over.
Right, but I mean, you can't put a 1.8 in with 3 4s. That
I would
won't help.
start all over.
Right. So it's a big step each time you do it because
it is.
you do start over.
It is.
Yeah.
But if I were to do RAID, I would do it externally, and I would do it with something like that. I need something that I can connect to a machine and connect any machine. And that is probably one of the best I've seen. There's a couple other options I've seen. I've looked at B&H that have enterprise drives in them. I don't remember the two brands. I'd have to dig it up. I wasn't prepared to talk about it. But after having access, in fact, I'll show you on Builder Buy right quick. After having access to something that works off that port, let me look at Builder Buy. And the article that I was talking about was right there, using USB 3.1C. I tested a Vantech USB 3.1C storage adapter, and I also did a little article there, a little talking about that LG monitor. But that adapter that had too short of a cable is ideal on a laptop. For someone that has a laptop like Lou Warren, like Nick Streeter, like Andrew, that's ideal. I put an SSD in that. Boy, wow, I liked it. It moved the way I needed to. I could clone with it. I could do video with it. It's like, you know, once you go with an SSD, you don't want to go back to a spinning hard drive. Well, I'm still using spinning hard drives because I need some place to store all that video. I need some place to work with all that video. Once I've done it, I need some place to store it offline.
Hey, Gil, looking at those 4 motherboards you had there,
Yes, sir.
I don't see on the row in the Asus, I don't see any place for NVMe drives.
You don't see a place for what?
NVMe drives,
Which one?
the Asus.
It's got to be.
Well, if you look
See it either.
If you look over, say here,
Yeah, you can see the ones.
you can see 3 of them,
I think there's
Yeah, if you
2 on the
look over
Gigabyte, there's 3 on the MSI.
and I don't see, and there's none over here, and there's none over here.
You know, I hadn't noticed that, but you're right. That's strange.
And I'm not sure I want to buy a motherboard without an NVMe drive.
I think the
A new
first one, the ASRock, I see the connector, which
Yeah,
means,
I saw the connector on this one here.
yeah, I see it right there.
View image. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. So this has got them.
Where's number 3? Oh, I
Over
see
here.
it. Okay.
1, 2,
Could
3.
it be vertical?
Well,
I've never seen one vertical.
Well,
but
I haven't either, but I mean, if you're not recognizing them, maybe they swapped
Well,
it up.
I'm saying I'm looking at this thing here,
let's look at the Asus again.
and I don't see where they would put them. I don't see either a vertical or a horizontal.
There's no way they can.
Receptacle.
Yeah, there's no way they could put one on here in
See,
portrait.
they've got these 3 things here. These
Yeah,
2.
PCI 1.0. There's a
Yeah.
PCI 2, which is kind of odd.
Yeah. And this is so busy with capacitors and
Yeah, there's no connector
components,
there.
I don't see where they could put them. I don't know what's under this.
Unless they put them on the back.
Well, that would be really inconvenient.
Very inconvenient, but there was one board, and I think John Lum with that B350 had one that went on the back. And I'd never seen that before, so that's why I mention it. If we were to go into that board and look at more, see if it'll tell us the specs. This will take us straight into Asus's website. That's rather disconcerting. You know, again, after I've done a NVMe drive, I don't want to do without it.
Yeah.
Let's check the specs. Got the right chipset, right amount of memory. It says it's got M.2. But where the heck are they? 2 M.2 socket 3, 1 M.2. I don't know the differentiation because all 3 of those look like they're the same. Same length, same SATA versus PCI, which is NVMe. But I don't know where it's at because I don't see it on the picture. What we'd have to do is, let me back out of that just a minute. Is that board even available yet? Newegg, B&H. B&H may have the best photo on it.
Look on the left, see if they show you the back. A whole lot of pictures.
This upper left where the shroud is, that's possible. That overlaps where the memory's at. Let's go to the next picture. It's possible, but not three of them.
You know, I see a couple of screw holes there 3 times.
Where?
Both sides of the processor, there's a pair of holes, and to the right in the memory, there's another pair of holes. Almost centered on the processor. You see those silvery spots? Those look like screws.
That?
Screw holes.
Where the pointer's at?
No. Go to the left of the processor. Now go straight down. Oh, you passed them. In the middle. There, right there.
Those are capacitors.
Okay.
2 capacitors left, 2 capacitors right.
Darn.
If anything, up under here is where that, oh, here they are. There's the 2 power taps, 2 8-pin power taps. That's kind of weird. Well, let me cycle through the pictures, because if they're on the back, there should be a picture on the back. Now, there's one without the shroud. And they've got a fan in there. That's interesting. So there's your I/O extended out with a heat sink and a fan in between. So there's no way that can be in there.
What are they cooling?
Probably the memory. But why the memory on this side?
Oh, I don't know. I would think they're probably cooling some BIOS chips or some of those chips.
Now look at that. Look at that memory slot. There's 4 on each side of the CPU, and then there's that 5th one by itself,
Which one are you looking at? I'm looking at
separated by capacitors.
What one are you looking at, Gil?
I'm looking at the ASUS ROG, and what I did was I just pulled in information, went to Google to search for it.
Oh.
I did ASUS ROG Zen. Yeah, copy it. Then went to Google to search for it. And I went to B&H's website. Whoops, trying to bring up the camera. And then I went to B&H's website, and that's the picture I'm looking at. B&H typically has the best pages, the best pictures. Used to Newegg was the best, but the way you have to zoom in at Newegg, you get a better picture here with B&H. So I don't see, unless we get to the rear. Now there's the extra power tap to supply power to the PCI bus. Probably is only going to be an issue. Let's look at the back here like you guys suggested. And I don't see anything on the back either, except for this massive stiffener, which probably acts somewhat as a heat shield. And there's a heat shield on that end and a stiffener at the top of the board. So wherever they're putting the M.2, it's somewhere on the face. Yes? It said that on the face of it? Curious. DIM.2. I have no idea. I have not looked at that, but that's a different DIM. I hadn't even considered the ASUS board for a Threadripper. So this is my first time looking at all that. I haven't had time to research it. I'd have to read the manual and see what it says that does. Now you've got me curious.
M.2, I don't see that.
But I don't see anything on there for
Oh,
an
I
M.
see DIM2. I don't see an M.2. That's DIM.2.
But I don't see any place to plug in an M.2. So
I don't either, to be honest with you.
I don't know how they're doing it.
You don't think there's a card that goes in there that they plug into?
Well, now I don't know. I don't know why they would call it DIM, though. It's dual inline memory modules, what DIM stands for.
Yes. I'll have to look into it because I don't know. I'm green on that.
Well, I didn't mean to get you sidetracked. I just
It's okay. I'm glad you pointed it out.
trying to figure out where they.
That's what we do. We figure stuff out. But I don't see anything on here for an M.2. So the next thing to do now is download the manual. I'll do that because I want to know. You got me curious. So anyway, that's the link to the 4 boards, and the 2 I'm considering are the Gigabyte or the MSI. Nothing wrong with the other boards. I've built with ASUS and I've built with ASRock. But my comfort zone is either the Gigabyte or the MSI. And I like the MSI because of what I did with this Ryzen. But I'm concerned about the Gigabyte. I do not want to give up my hot swap. Hot swap's a big deal for me. It's kind of like the case. It's a follow-through point. When I get a case, I've got to have a place I can plug that in. When I get a case, I've got to also be able to plug in a Blu-ray because I use the stuff from, I keep wanting to say Sonic Foundry, which is now Magix. I use Vegas Video, and Vegas Video includes DVD Architect. So I have the ability to create a CD, DVD, Blu-ray.
Gil,
Yes.
okay, I just read the M.2 slot is hidden under the very large PCH heatsink.
Hidden under a heatsink?
Yes, the PCH heatsink.
Which one is that? The one on the left or the one on the right?
Well, I haven't located it yet. But that's what the statement is on this one site.
Well, we have a heat sink on the left. We got a heat sink on the top. The heat sink on the bottom right is for the chipset.
Yeah.
It's possible there's one under there, but not probable.
What's the one on the,
That,
what's,
that
what's
You
actually
got to
looks
find
like,
3, remember?
Yeah.
I think that's the heatsink they're talking about. Is that one you see on the right?
Is the one that covers the chipset?
Yes.
Fascinating. So there should be a picture on here that shows it without that heat sink.
Yeah, it would have to be removable.
yeah.
Yeah. All these pictures, none of them show it with that removed. Here it is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a layer. There it is.
There's one.
Wow. That may be 2.
Oh, yeah, they're,
It looks like they're stacked.
yeah.
I've
No,
never-
I bet you they're sticking left and right, but you can only see one screw.
It's a top to bottom.
You think so?
Yeah, look at the
Well,
3
look at all those
screws.
connectors to the right.
Well, the connectors on the right are your the U2 and your SATA and SATA Express. And then you've got that 9-pin, it looks like there's 2 of the 19-pin USB 3 connectors. One on the bottom and then one over there on the right. So if you look at the orientation top to bottom, where it says LED x399 PCH, that's the PCH he's talking about. There's 3 screws there. So
So where are you? I'm lost.
go to, take the information that I pulled up and go to, it's easier to find it on B&H's website. That's where I'm looking at.
Okay.
So go back to the other link on the TR4 and then take that information, right click on it and say search. Right here, search. Now we'll get a link on the far right side that should get us into B&H, and it did not. So take that information, let's put it on the clipboard, copy it, and let's go bring up another link and let's go over to B&H's site right over here. Yeah, just go to that one. And let's paste that information in there. We should find it this way. There it is, that board right there. Okay, and then let's go down to the picture. That's probably picture number, which one? Picture number 1, 2, 3, 4, picture number 5. So it'll be 3 on the left. Go up to the top left. 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be that picture right there. That's it. Click on it. That'll bring it full screen. And then click on it again. That'll get it. Oh, that's not it. Use one of the arrows, backwards or forward. Try that one. Yep, that's it. Now expand it. Click on it. Yeah, as long as you got
Oh, I see the 3 screws here.
yeah, there's the 3 screws top and bottom, and there's the where it plugs in up underneath there. So that's stacking too. I've never seen that. See right here, folks? Right here we are. Here's the 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. I've never seen one oriented like that. And that plug is up there, and from here it looks like two plugs. So you put two of those, one on top of the other, which means the other one's got to be under here somewhere.
Which means that's why they got a heat sink or the fan up over there or something.
Bingo, bingo. That's weird.
Yeah, that is.
That is really weird. You know, I've heard and read a lot of stuff about people having trouble with the heat with the M.2 drives, and to stack two like that, I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Well, fortunately, you have two other motherboards to look at.
Well, I only usually put one M.2 drive on a machine, but in Ray's case, Ray's going to be building an Intel. He's going to use two M.2 drives. One will be his boot drive, and the other will be his scratch or his data drive. Picture 9 and 10? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, number 9. It's back on there. Yeah, I only found that one picture that didn't have a cover. That one. All the others have the cover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I haven't given it much thought, but the little thought I did said it would be very difficult to RAID an SSD for a C drive. Because
Well, now remember, the Threadripper does not support NVMe RAID. The Threadripper...
that may be what brought it to my mind was seeing that statement, because it just looked to me like, how in the world would you do that?
The Threadripper, and it says in the specs, remember, let's go back over to AMD's site. Let me go back up. Right here. NVMe RAID, no. The CPU does not support NVMe RAID. Now, can the Intel do that? I don't know. I'll have to go check it out. But the big difference for me is the PCI lanes. 66 PCI lanes. So even though we read articles that tell us one thing, you have to consider when the article was written. And it's easy to take what you perceive or you think something is, but this is what, as they say, this is from the horse's mouth. Straight from Intel, 66 PCI lanes. So as the boards go, that's one. Made in China, gotta love it. I bet every one of these are made in the same factory, if we knew the truth. That is really strange the way that's hooked on there. So to reiterate, what I'm looking at are one of these two boards, Gigabyte or the MSI. So I'm going to use the fastest processor. I'm going to use one of these two boards. Now I'm going to go back to Build or Buy and take you through some of this information that I've got for the, and I've also got a link on YouTube from Gigabyte, how to install the chip. That's the shortest video I think I've seen yet. It claims it's unlisted. I had it through some stuff that Gigabyte sent, and you can see how quick and easy it is to do it. But the two articles about people building machines, I'll get back to the case in just a minute. 12 and 13. Number 13, here's a gentleman building an 8K video editing beast, a 16-core Threadripper. And here's another guy on YouTube, Wolf Crow. I think he's in India, and he is talking about his specs for DaVinci Resolve 4K editing. Now, his goal, his intention, and what he's trying to do is he wants to share this video with you because he wants you to buy his spec sheet. He wants to sell his spec sheet, which is like 48 pages as a PDF, and he wants you to pay, I think, like $7 for it. So if you want it, that's one way to do it, or you can come here and we'll do it for free. But it's an interesting article. And then we talked about Lenovo a while ago. Lenovo is the only authorized vendor to build a desktop machine on a Threadripper. I'm sure there'll be others later, but I've got a link up on that. I mentioned Box. Now the thermal solution with AMD, I'm going to hold down the control key and bring this up, because this is where I want to get to, is the thermal solution with a case. This has a list of all the vendors, with all the coolers, and for my money, for bang for the buck, I'm just going to kick to it and go with Corsair. If I did an air cooling solution like we've always done with fans, I would go with Noctua. But I'm so pickle-tink with this liquid cooler, which is what Ray, he was ahead of all of us doing a liquid cooler, and he put that in a case that wasn't supposed to support it. He had some problems. He swapped it out with the manufacturer. It's been running good ever since. I'm going to use a Corsair. The question is, do I use the H100 version 2 or an H115? I'm probably going to use the H100i version 2. 280 millimeter versus a 240 millimeter, because the size of the radiator will dictate the case I'm going to put it in. And I need a case that I can maneuver with. So if I stick with Corsair for the cooler, I'm going to stick with probably Corsair for the case. But I'm still considering a Lee & Lee case. I'm a big fan of Lee & Lee. I like their cases. So if I click on, I'll hold down the control key, the H100. This is the 240 millimeter radiator. The other is a 280 millimeter. And Ray's talking about he may use an even larger radiator than a 280 millimeter. So I'm really curious, because remember, Ray stuck his radiator in a case that wasn't supposed to handle one. I don't know how he did it, but he got it in there. Had it zip tied, and it worked. So I'm curious to see what case he decides to build the other machine with. So I'm going to go back over to Build or Buy. I've got a link up here on the two radiators, the 280, the 240. I've got a link to a Lee & Lee case that should work. And here's the new case. I'm going to hold down the control key. I'll bring this up, which is a Corsair Vengeance, which I thought was kind of curious. One of the big things we've always had in cases in the past are the thumb screws on the back so you can pull the lids off. I like those thumb screws. I miss the cases we used to have where you could pull the motherboard tray out. I always thought those were pretty cool. We don't have those. There's still a few of them around. But on this particular case, they've done away with the thumb screws, and they've got these latches that hook onto the top. So I'm going to try that case because that case can handle a 240 millimeter radiator. And that case also has handles on it. And because it's got those handles, it should be a little bit easier to get around with. There may be a window on it. I don't know. I'll find out when it gets here. But the fact that it's got handles, the sides are out a little bit. Dimensionally, and the space relations look good enough that I think I can get it in the car without a whole lot of trouble. And it kind of makes you wonder, because I've always said a lot of these components that people design, they're engineers. They don't think about this stuff moving. It's like they build it, they sit on the shelf, and you look at it. Well, there's a few of us that move stuff around. And apparently they've solved that moving it around problem with this case. This has better feet that won't come off. The only thing I can't get a good picture of, and I don't think I can zoom this. Let me try it. If I do, it's going to mess up. Let's see. Because again, I'm on a dual screen. Let's see what happens with the switch. No, it's not going to work because I'm on dual screen. So let me zoom back out. That's really interesting. But anyway, right in there where my mouse is moving around, that's the hole I need where I can bring the power cable through to the front of that motherboard. Now, let's go back and look at the motherboard, because I noticed, and I hadn't noticed before, on this particular Asus board, those two power taps were up here where my mouse is at in the top right. They're usually always over here on the top left. The MSI board, top left. The Gigabyte board, top left. So as I'm looking at the motherboard, matching it with the case, top left fits me. But if I were to use the Asus board, I wouldn't use the top left. I'd use top right, which would be out this top grommet. But I should have plenty of room to do everything I need. And the way this case is designed, these cages in here, what I should do, let me go find that case at somebody's site where we can zoom in on it. Let me go over to B&H. Vengeance Gaming Tower case. I'll highlight it. I'll do a search on Google. I should see B&H. There it is. Special order. That's interesting. They had one of those in stock the other day. I know, I bought it. Yeah. Here's what the latches look like. There's what the handles look like. That solution that Jack had, where you could put a sling on a desktop, that's always been in the back of my mind. I've never done it, but I've thought about doing it, especially since we move computers all the time. But with this case, they're built in. What I don't like, I don't think I can stack, but I wouldn't stack anyway because that's where the cooler is going to be. Some of the cases I've looked at, and I've got a link up to the Lee & Lee, radiator could go in the top, radiator could go in the front, radiator could go in the bottom. This case, I'd put in the top. I'm not real, and I could put it in the front. I'm not real big on putting a radiator in the front of a case because I need these drive bays. This case gives me 3 bays. I'll use 2 of those for a hot swap rack. I'll use 1 for the burner, and then I'm done. I'm tapped. If I wanted to add something else like USB ports to the front, I'm out of it. But this case has 2 USB 3.0 ports on the front. I don't have a USB 3.1C. But then I think the only cases that supply that now are probably the Fantex. There's a special connector on the motherboard for USB 3.1C to bring that to the front. I haven't found anybody that sells that separately yet, but I'm still looking.
Are you thinking that you would hot swap USB 3C instead of having it wired in?
If I could have it wired in, I would prefer it to the front. If there was some way I could put the connector like on the top of the case, or if I have to run it out of cable, lay it down to the side, I want to get easy access to this RAID machine if I do that. I don't want to have to reach around to the back of the case for that.
Well, okay, you got a different plan in mind than I do, but
Exactly.
if I were trying to do this, I would think that my high-speed thing would probably be static, that I'd connect it at the back and just never look at it again. But of course, if you're going to pick this thing up, once we can bring it here.
I've got to be able to disconnect it.
Yeah, okay.
And I've got to be able to plug it in. For example, this Ryzen machine, I've got it doing 3 things. I could probably do a couple of other things with it. Whereas right next to it, I have an FX machine that is only doing 1 thing. If I monkey with that FX machine, the 1 thing it's doing will go bonkers, and I lose it. But what I want to test later is that 1 thing it's doing, move that into the Ryzen machine and see how it handles that activity. I don't think it's going to go bonkers. Everything I've done with that machine has been great. For example, the screen that's in the background that you see, which is like an image of an image of an image, I keep that up so I can see what's going on. What I need to do is turn off the preview, because that sometimes makes that application go bonkers with preview turned on. The reason I keep it on is so I can see what's going on at a glance. In the future, my plan is that's going to have something else on the screen. Kind of like you see when they do the news and you see something in the background moving. I'm going to do that. I can run that on the Ryzen machine. I could not do that with the FX machine. I've had the FX machine that we're using to do just 1 thing with go bonkers. So I'm real careful not to touch it while it's doing that. Now, as I reallocate stuff, when I get rid of that FX machine, there will be another Ryzen machine or a Threadripper, because I want to be able to bring the Threadripper up here, talk about it, use it, and show it in the stuff it's doing. This one purpose for a computer is kind of getting crazy. I mean, why should I have 2 computers when I could do all that stuff with 1 computer? So if you say it's expensive, well, one computer that'll do everything is a whole lot cheaper than 2 computers that are doing everything. Takes up less space, uses less electricity, puts out less heat. So there's just lots of benefits to it, but it's getting there, getting that comfort zone. You know, you think, there's a lot of people, there used to be a statistic that said, for those of us that have been building computers for over the years, whatever you spent on the original computer is what you'd spend on the next computer. Well, there was a day in time we used to spend $5,000 on a computer. Y'all remember those days? Well, I remember those days, and I wish Bill was here, because he was one of those people that did it. I remember that. Well, and you look at now, we're still not building a $5,000 computer. But look at what we're able to do with them. It's head and shoulders above what we used to do. So, you know, kind of going full circle, I wish I'd have had access to this kind of stuff. But I'm glad we have access to it now. You know, this video thing that we've been working on for a lot of years, it's easy now. Back when we were trying to do it, it was just archaic. It was a big deal to try to find a capture card. A capture card's not a big deal now. You know, we used to buy the ATI All-in-Wonder cards, and the ATI had an All-in-Wonder capture card. And before that, there was an ATI card that you actually plugged a bus mouse into. Well, we thought that was slick with a bus mouse. I remember all that stuff. I've been through all that stuff. So with what we're able to do now, it's nice. It's a whole lot better. And being able to do the video, as I'm progressing through this, when I get this case, I'm going to do something about this case, and I'll show the inside and the outside, but I'll do it as a video online, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not going to bring it up here for us to monkey with. It's other stuff, because I wanted to show you guys the processors, AMD, Intel. I wanted to show you the chipset, x399 versus x299, and I wanted to show you the one big glaring difference was the PCI lanes. And I think that's a big deal. And I gave you a little taste of what's going on with some of the workstation class video cards. And again, I think that's a big deal, but that's a whole other deal. I've got a link up here from Red Shark as we move on, talking about hard disk capacity. I'm always curious in their perspective, because it goes with what we've been talking about, whether you build a machine with NVMe drives. If you've got video, then an NVMe drive is not big enough, whereas a spinning drive is adequate. But if I can take a spinning drive, put 2, 3, or 4 of them together and make them faster, and I can get the capacity and I can get the speed, so I can do the work, and then I can put that stuff off on a single drive. The RAID is not being built for storage, it's being built for editing. And I need to be able to unplug it so I can put it on another machine to do whatever I'm going to do, whether I bring it up here and show it or whatever. So this is all about building a machine. And I'm going to leave you with a couple other thoughts. Samsung is coming out with a new NVMe drive. This is from Tom's Hardware. It's a listing that appeared on Dell's website, which is kind of curious. And one last thing, because we need to talk about when we come back, the new Windows. I've got an article up here from Asus, which I find quite curious, because one thing that's in the new version of Windows that's coming out, love it, like it, hate it, whatever, Asus talks about doing this very activity, and it's something we've talked about in the past, converting an MBR to a GPT. Now, when you build a new machine, that's one thing, but when you try to convert, you're asking for a can of worms if you don't go the full process. This capability to convert from MBR to GPT is in the new Windows command line tool. But Asus has a tool and has had that for quite some time. But you got to follow the full step. If you're going from an MBR to a GPT, you've also got to set the BIOS to boot from a regular BIOS to a unified EFI BIOS. If you don't have all your ducks in a row, you're asking for trouble. So when you build a new machine, everything goes and you're done. To convert it, unless you know what you're doing and the changes you got to make, you're asking for trouble. But I want to put that link up there to leave you all with. So, anybody got any questions about Intel or AMD? I didn't get enough into Intel like I wanted to, but I wanted to focus on one thing, and that was those PCI lanes. The information, straight from the horse's mouth. I wanted to show you those 4 motherboards. We got more into one of the boards than I expected to, but I learned something I didn't know. I'm not real fond of the way ASUS is stacking that, or trying to stack that M.2 drive. That's just my opinion. So any questions? Nobody's got any questions? Yes, sir. John. Yes, John.
Looking at your talking points list there, number 5.
Yes, sir.
When I click it, I get just this is a side issue.
Did I mess up?
This site is blocked by the network administrator.
Lee and Lee. Okay, so I'm going to have to put up another.
It's something I've never seen before. So
they're using a sonic wall filter, and I've had that a couple times before. They think that site is spam. That's happened before. What I'll have to do is I'll change the link from Lee and Lee's website to one of the vendors. So I'll highlight it. Thanks for pointing that out. No, you know, when you put a router in or when you put a firewall in, sonic wall is a great piece of equipment, but instead of buying something like that, I think you're better off looking at something like pfSense, where you're taking whatever gear you want in a box, you build a computer, then you put pfSense on it to do what that does for a whole lot less money. Or you get something like a MikroTik router, which is not bad for what it does. But if you want good security, pfSense, but they're using sonic wall. So I'm going to highlight that information. I'll go search it. I will put up a link probably to, I'll say something to them about it, but I would say probably to B&H. And the reason, again, for it is that particular case, there's only one picture here. There's several pictures on this at Newegg, but Newegg will show it sold out. It's got 3 bays. It's got the top, which is a 4th one. Let me go back and look at, let's pull up another one. We'll do another search for it. Newegg is going to have better pictures on this particular case. That's a PCIe 61. Yeah, here we are, PCIe 61 from Newegg. Okay, that says out of stock, but they'll have some better pictures. Yes, Joe.
Wait a minute. I'm getting an error on Tom's Hardware. I don't know what.
Tom's Hardware?
Yeah.
What's the matter?
Item 2.
They've got him blocked too?
Yeah. Oh, I just screwed that up, I think.
Bring up another link, go to Builder Buy, and we'll go into it. I don't know how they arrive at the lists. I don't know if they're blocking by IP address according to location, which is a possibility. I don't know who else is on that server or what their criteria are.
Yep. Here's what I'm getting.
So it's blocking that one too?
Yeah.
Okay, that Tom's Hardware link with a Samsung. Oh, wow. Yeah, the problem is the goober that put that up there, which was me. I'll fix that. Because if you look at the link, it says builderbuy.net Tom's Hardware. I know how that happened. I'll fix that. I'll try and fix that tonight after I've slept a couple hours. Cut and paste, and that'll get you to the article. I'll fix it tonight. That one I can fix. Dell updated its data protection self-encrypting drive, Dell Encryption Enterprise self-encrypting drive management compatibility chart to include. Dell only shows a 512 and a 1 terabyte. Will not release this. This doesn't mean Samsung will not release this series in other capacities as well. And this one is a, see if we can get that up bigger. No, it's not going to come up any bigger. And I can't zoom in on it. Okay. This computer is set up for dual display. If I zoom in on it, it's going to go off screen. So did y'all lose it? Yeah. See, I can see it fine here, but the switch doesn't see it. Let me try something else. Ah, there it is. Okay. That's the on-stream, that's the stream key for the on-air graphics. Okay, so now you can see it. Okay, I'm looking at this part. It's got one notch, so it's an NV. I can read it, but I can't read it plain enough. All I see is Rev 0, 17, looks like 32. I see a model number, but I don't know if that says what the size of it is. Zoom back out. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Next generation NVMe. These ads. Let's see here. So that's a 512 and a 1 terabyte. They're both PCI Express 3.0 by 4. Samsung 64-layer TLC. The 1 terabyte is faster. Our pricing details come from Sailback, an online seller based in Vietnam. Using an online conversion tool, the new PM981 NVMe sell for around $233 for the 512 and $439 for the 1 terabyte. Well, that's if you could get your hands on one.
That's not much of a price premium.
Not much of a what?
Price premium?
No, not much of a price premium, I agree.
You mean between NVMEs?
The fast one there is $400, and 1 terabyte is also $400 of the existing line. I'm just saying, you know, that would
Oh, okay.
So you're paying like an extra $40.
Well, I was hoping this new one would make the old one cheap.
Let's get a mic so we can hear Robert. Otherwise, nobody online will hear you.
I was just hoping that this new one was going to be so earth-shaking that the old one would become cheap, and then I'd go buy one. But I just looked it up the day or so ago, and it's still 1 terabyte, pretty close to $400. And I'd be interested in it for maybe $200. But, you know, it's going to take a new generation to push it down. And so I said, aha, they finally did it, but they didn't do it.
Well, and we've been reading prices were going to be kind of high for a while, but we heard that too and saw it on RAM for a while. But RAM seems to be pretty reasonably priced right now. And that's something else that I didn't get into with this machine. You know, you put that kind of machine together, we're talking about like the laptop a while ago, maybe putting 8 gigs in it. Putting 32 gigs of RAM in an FX machine maxed it out. That's a lot. And in the beginning, 32 gigs on a machine wouldn't work, even though the spec was supposed to. But now, building a Threadripper, 32 gigs of RAM, that sounds like a lot of memory. But I think it's more realistic because the motherboard will support 128 gig. They're not available yet, but it's more realistic, I think, to put 64 gigs on there because we're now quad channel. And quad channel is a big deal. So are most people going to use that much RAM? Okay. We're not building a desktop machine. It's a workstation machine. So is even a workstation machine going to use all that RAM? Depends on the application. Like we talked before again about the stuff with Adobe. Adobe will take anything you throw at it. And if somebody's putting in a workstation class video card, they're probably going to be putting in some memory. Now, when I say that, I'm curious to see what Ray will do with the machine he's talking about building. If the stopgap for him right now is this video card, then he'll stop right there. So I've kind of got mixed feelings. I kind of hope it works for him, but I kind of hope it doesn't. Because he says if it doesn't, then I'll use that card in the new machine. Well, if you're going to build a new machine, you may want a better card than that. But for what he does, that older card for that money may be just what he needs. And with that card, which is a workstation card, is less expensive than a regular desktop card. 32 gigs of RAM may be a lot of memory for him. I don't know how his applications are run. So it's an interesting conversation, but I'm probably planning on putting 64 gigs of RAM in that machine when I build it. So I've got the case coming. I'll tell you more about it as I get further down, because one thing I'm looking at is, one, the case, deciding which one, and two, the radiator. Because when I put the radiator in this thing, it was like building a watch. And I said, if I ever had to take that thing apart, it's got to go back in the same way it came in there. Because to get anything out, it ain't going to happen. You can't reverse the order. Once everything goes in there, that's it. It was like building a watch. Kind of felt like I built a Rolex when I got through with it, but I've been very pleased with the performance. So anyway, has anybody got any more questions about building a machine? Manolo. It's on.
You're saying that you're going to, there's a new operating system coming up.
Yeah, a little closer. Say
It's
that
on?
again. That's better.
Okay. Windows 10 is going to be upgraded, you said?
There's a new Windows coming out, Windows 10 for Workstation. It's
Okay.
coming out when the new Fall Creators Update comes out.
You're not going to need that, Manolo.
You're not?
You
You're
won't
not,
need it.
no. It's
Okay.
going to cost you more money, and it won't buy you anything.
Yeah, it
Okay.
won't do a thing for you.
All right. Mighty fine. Okay.
What you'll want to stick with on your machine at the most would be Windows Pro, but if you're buying a $1,000 machine, whatever's there, leave it alone. If it's got Windows Home on it, leave it alone. It'll do what you want.
Okay, thanks.
Because this new version of Windows, and that's an interesting question, I'm glad you brought it up. Windows for Workstation is going to be for workstation class machines, which would be a Xenon processor or an Opteron. As an update later on, they will do an update that will allow Windows for Workstation to work on a Threadripper or on an i9.
And when you get that Windows for Workstation, they're going to ask you what your CPU is.
Yes.
Find out how many CPUs you have in there, and the price of Windows varies by that CPU count.
And it's going to go up.
Yes. So you don't need, trust me, you don't need
You don't want
to
it.
go through that.
No. If you were doing CAD work, you'd build a workstation machine. If you were doing a lot of rendering, you'd want a workstation machine. But you're going to surf the web. So that $1,000 laptop will do what you want. When you ask me if I were buying a laptop, what I'd get the Asus Zen 4K if I could find one. I should have bought one back when they bought them. The only place I've seen it, they had them for a while on B&H, but the only place I've seen it was a vendor on Amazon, because the new stuff's coming out. If I looked at the technology that's in that laptop, it's like it marked a time, and that time is moving. So the technology in that laptop's not changing. So the new laptops will be coming out with the new stuff, and I'd be looking at one of those. But I look at every laptop and judge it according to the Asus Zen, and I haven't seen anything for the money that I like as well. I still think that was bang for the buck. $1,200 to buy that same thing now is like $1,500, which kind of sucks. But it's an Asus Zen 4K. Thin, long battery life, loved it.
Nick, can I ask, Nick, yours is a touchscreen, right?
Yes.
Now, if you put that up on the shelf like you do and put your laptop or desktop monitor, like the ones we have, that takes away the touch. No, we don't. So if you bought a touchscreen monitor, would that flow through like that, I wonder, through the USB port?
Let's put a mic on you, Nick.
I really don't like the touch screen. I'm too old-fashioned for that, I guess. Besides, that got grease all over my fingers. No, I like it plenty just like it is. And I don't use the keyboard on the screen either.
I know, yeah. Well, I think I've been going that over in my mind. If I decide to upgrade my PC, the one on my desk, I'm going to go the way you're going. I'm just going to get rid of that PC, get a good laptop.
Set it up on the shelf.
Yep, and put my screen on there.
And a wireless keyboard and mouse.
Right.
And I can take it anywhere I want to go. And I used to have 2 or 3 machines.
Yeah.
I got one. I just keep it backed up. I don't know if I can restore it, but I can back it up.
Now you know how to restore it and get back it up, right?
Details. Details.
And if Windows is putting out an update, make sure you have a clone copy.
Those updates are so annoying. I had 2 machines today that wanted to update last week. I finally let them today. Didn't take as long as I was afraid it was going to take, but it's just annoying. Because I like to keep the computers hooked up, that if someone says, can we look at the BIOS? I can boot any one of these computers and go to the BIOS, and we can still see it on the screen. And that's annoying with a laptop. We have to put a camera on the screen for us to see what's going on. It's because of the dual display. There's no way to turn off the primary or change primary display. Has anybody got any more questions about a computer right now? About the Intel or the AMD? Yes, Manolo.
You were saying about the that desktop there, the laptop. What number was it? It was
the Asus.
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 Yeah.
Zen. Z-E-N. Asus Zen 4K.
Asus 10?
Zen.
No, Zen. Z-E-N.
Oh, C-E-N.
No,
Z,
Z.
like an Oriental religion.
Okay.
Or
okay, you got that up there. Okay, and that's
it. Asus Zen 4K.
4K. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Now, this comes in 2 configurations. One of them has Windows 10. This is Microsoft Signature. The one with Windows 10 Pro. The reason being, the differentiation. One has 2 gig video. The other one has 4 gig video. The one that everybody up here bought that with the NVMe drive has Windows 10 Pro in it and has 4 gig video.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And it is now, let's see, it's not showing the price. Let's see the buying options. Oh, it's back to 1150. There's one that's a refurb. They want 1369.
No, don't get a refurb.
No. Now, this is Tony Technologies with 53% positive. I wouldn't buy from this guy. All three of those are refurbs.
Okay.
Nobody has that brand new.
Okay, well, I'll look around. Thank you very much.
But that's an Asus Zen 4K with Windows 10 Pro because it has an NVIDIA GTX 960 4 gig. That's an old chipset now. But at the time, that was the one to get. They went from $1,200 to $1,500. And they had them at Costco for like 2 weeks. And they were gone. And the last bastion I found was here, and that's disappearing too. But don't buy one used. You don't want that hassle. So, yeah then. So we'll go back to any more questions about computers? Anybody?
Nope.
Now remember, tomorrow is that special event for Richard Worthen's wife who passed away. It's a memorial service at 10 o'clock. For those that have a chance, Lou sent out a broadcast message. Y'all should have had it this morning. It's going to be, did it go to your spam filter, Nick? Yeah. Bummer. Well, if hers went, mine did too, because I sent you a copy of it. And I sent you the updated one because I had it for next month, but it's tomorrow, 10 o'clock. So if any of y'all can go, I'd appreciate it. Some support for Richard Worthen. He's really frazzled right now. We will not have a meeting next week, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. Next week, they're doing a special event up here. I don't know what the wing ding is, but they need the day before to get ready for it. So we'll be back in November, and that will be that first Wednesday, and that will be the first.
And we'll see how many people have backed up their machines.
That's right. Remember, folks, next week, in 2 weeks, clone imager backup. We'll cover a little bit of that. I want to thank you for joining us online. I hope you enjoyed this today. Hope you found it helpful. If you did, please subscribe. Everybody take a look at the website. Thanks for joining us. Have a good holiday, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.